CBC Kids continues the company policy of calling actual terrorists militants instead of terrorists. And then I watched a CBC Kids video, so you don't have to. Unfortunately, we will go through the video together. Last weekend, Gaza-based Hamas terrorists set upon a wave of murder, arson, beheadings, shootings, beatings, kidnappings, rapes, and immolations against Israeli civilians. As I'm filming this, at least 1,300 Israelis were killed, thousands more were injured, and hundreds are still held hostage in Gaza as human shields. It's textbook terrorism, and yet news broke in a leaked email that it was editorial policy at the CBC to not refer to Hamas as terrorists. CBC reportedly instructs journalists not to refer to perpetrators of deadly Israeli rampage as terrorists. A leaked email allegedly from CBC's Director of Journalistic Standards says journalists should refrain from referring to Hamas gunmen as terrorists. An email circulating on social media appears to show CBC's Director of Journalistic Standards, George Atchie, telling journalists to, quote, use fact-based language and not to refer to militants as terrorists. Hamas, however, is currently designated as a terrorist organization by the Government of Canada. Despite these unprecedented attacks, CBC's Director of Journalistic Standards also purportedly instructed journalists to not describe 2005 as the end of the occupation in Gaza, where Israel gave control of the Gaza Strip to the Palestinians. Speaking further about not using the word terrorist, the director wrote that terrorism remains heavily politicized. So this begs the question, is this happening all over the CBC? What are they doing over at CBC Kids, that little brainwashing factory? Well, they're doing the same, refusing to call terrorists by their name. I saw this on X from conservative activist Stephen Taylor. So I checked out that CBC Kids article. Here's the article for Kids About the War. Let's read a bit of it together. The latest violence started Saturday morning. A Palestinian militant group called Hamas attacked Israel by air, land, and sea. Militants are groups of people who often use aggressive or violent actions in support of a cause. Not terrorists, militants, following the company line. Then the CBC Kids article lists a bunch of ways to help Gazans, but literally none on how to help Israelis, who were the actual victims of the terrorism. CBC also never lists the number of Israelis displaced from border communities, but they list the number of Gazans displaced. Then I clicked on the CBC's Gaza-Israel conflict explainer video for kids to see how much worse it would get. CBC never lets me down that way. Their explainer video starts Israel's history inexplicably in 1897, when I guess some Jews must have been built in a laboratory somewhere and then dropped from the sky into the Holy Land after never existing there before. Because what even is the Bible or archaeology? The video also claims Israel sparked several wars. Not that the Israelis were attacked hours after declaring independence. The video never explains why Gaza was blocked or turned over to the Palestinians entirely by Israel. CBC makes it seem like Israel is just choking Gaza off for funsies. Not that Israel has historically provided free food, water, and electricity to the terror town that harbors a terror organization dead set on genocide against the Israelis. And the last line in the video is really something else. Both sides have used violence to protect themselves. This is moral equivalence nonsense. The violence on behalf of the Israelis is self-defense versus terror and murder on behalf of Hamas. One is not the same as the other. However, this video aligns perfectly with CBC's editorial policy of downplaying absolute terror and calling it by any other name. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn-Reid. Rebel News has sent our journalist Avi Yamini to the very dangerous war zone of Israel, where he is not only reporting on the war, but reporting on the reporting of the war to support his very important journalism. And to see all of his reports, please go to thetruthaboutthewar.com.